Here we are. So this is the exam information. Nothing new here, just a reminder, which I'll do each time as we go along. One thing I should add to this is that this week will be the last week of material that's on the exam. So today and Thursday? And then there'll be a week with no material that's going to be on the exam, just so that you have a chance to review. Otherwise, you're kind of, to ask questions and all of that stuff. So the next week's stuff won't be on this exam. It will, of course, be on the final exam, but it won't be on this exam. So you have a bit of chance. I need to put on old exam questions for you. I'm having the hardest time. I think it has to do with the network connectivity issues and Brightspace not moving things over from one. But anyway, tonight I'll figure out some way to do it. If I have to email you all with the old exam questions or put it on Dropbox or whatever I have to do, I'll get them to you tonight. Okay. Questions about the exam? Okie dokie. Yeah, you just look so demoralized. Oh, another exam, son of a bitch. So many questions, but who can even care at this stage? But there's an exam nonetheless. Okay. So now we're starting a new section of the course, which is our first section that talks about economic theory, about understanding the economy rather than just measuring. Okay, we did have one kind of understanding thing, which was the sandwich thing. Like if I make something and sell it to you, the value of that is the same as the value that you pay me. Your expenditure, same as my income. For the economy as a whole, those things have to be the same. So that's important, and that's going to come back to get us here. We're going to start to use that in theory. In the book that's assigned for the class is chapter 22, short-term economic fluctuations. But of course, you are allowed to use any book since 1947 is going to, I can think of only one, and you'll never find it. That's not because nobody bought it, right? So this model is in every single introductory macroeconomic textbook. You just have to find the section. So whatever you got, you're good. There's one thing that you have to be careful of, which I'll point out as we go along. But other than that, look for the Keynesian cross diagram, the Keynesian model, the government spending multiplier. It's that section. It's almost always the first model they do after they're done with measurement stuff. So it's just like here. Right? Okay. So we're going to talk about, at the beginning, we're going to do a few definitional things, which are annoying because they're just definitions. But it helps if we're talking the same language. So we'll do that. A little dull, but what can you do? But just definitions. Then we'll talk about, this is also definitions. And then we'll talk about the Keynesian model. And the point of this whole chapter is to get to what's called the multiplier, or the government spending multiplier, or the expenditure multiplier, the multiplier. And that is the point of this. So when you're going through and reviewing this, we won't get there for this coming exam, but in the future, this is the thing to worry about. Like if you understand this, you're pretty much there. If you don't understand that, you've missed the point of the chapter. So this is the punchline of the whole thing. So be aware, be very aware. Okay? So that's what we're doing. And on the way, I'm going to talk about why we do theory in the first place. What's the point of it and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to get at. And if there's one thing that outside of the economics, this is true of theory in anything in social science. And so that is a useful thing, in particular commerce, theories in commerce, like Black-Scholes theory of how you should price options and all of that stuff. Same way of thinking about it exists. Okay, so we're going to be talking largely, in terms of the actual economy, we're going to be talking about recessions and expansions. And so recessions or expansions are going to be defined as, are we producing more stuff than normal? Are we producing less stuff than normal? If we're producing less stuff than normal, we're in a recession. If we're producing more stuff than normal, we're in an expansion. Okay? We could also do it in terms of unemployment, which we haven't talked about, but exists from living in the world, right? But from our point of view, for this class, we're going to talk mostly about production. And this isn't too bad because usually GDP, production, and unemployment move together. when GDP goes up, unemployment goes down. When GDP goes down, unemployment goes up. So this isn't a terrible, there's some issues there, but by and large, we're in the right ballpark. Anyway, and we're going to be doing it in terms of normal growth. So it's possible that if the economy is normally growing at 2%, and we have only 1% growth, that we're in a recession, that things are bad. Even though we're not growing as fast as we normally do. Okay? So it's all defined in terms of whatever is normal for the economy. Okay? Now, you can imagine that empirically, normal is going to be hard to define. From our point of view as theorists, we're theorists from now on, it's not a problem. But if you're trying to measure things, you have to figure out what normal is first, and that's always problematic. Okay? Okay. So if we're growing less than normal, we're in a recession. If we're growing, if it's really bad, it's a depression. Nowadays, even if it's really bad, we don't call it a depression for reasons we'll get to, that people's expectations can affect how the economy performs. So if you call it bad names, it becomes bad, but we will see how that works as we go along. And yeah, definitions. Okay? So there's a bunch of words that we're going to use all along. We're going to have, we have a recession. It can be particularly bad and become a depression. If we're growing at a rate higher than normal, we're in an expansion. If it's particularly strong and long-lasting, it's a boom. Okay? Now, how do you define particularly strong and long-lasting? Arbitrarily, right? But just so we're all talking the same language. Okay. Okay. One thing that we're going to want to emphasize here in this class, because this is a macroeconomics class, is that we're going to be particularly concerned with recessions and booms that sort of are felt throughout the economy. So sometimes one particular industry is having a hard time, right? So tourism is having a hard time. Like people don't want to travel because of COVID, and so tourism is having a bad time. That's not necessarily a recession, right? It could be that everything else is doing great. Now, if it's a large and important industry, that tends to have knock-on effects, as we'll see, and so the tourism industry doing bad can make everything else do bad as well. But if it was just the tourism industry, we would say, microeconomic phenomena, not really our problem here in macro. Important for people that work in that, but everything else is doing fine, so it's just something with tourism. But if it starts affecting, generally speaking, the whole economy, we're going to talk about it as a recession. We're going to be talking in particular, because we've defined things this way, that it's differences from normal. We're going to be talking about short-run fluctuations. Right? Suppose the economy was growing at 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%, and that's normal. And then we started growing at 1%. Okay? We're in a recession. Things are bad. But if it went on for 100 years of growing at 1%, at some point we have to cop on and say, maybe 1% is normal. And we're not in a recession. It's just 1% growth is what we get. Right? So we're going to be talking in particular about short-run fluctuations where we have some long-term growth path. Maybe 0, maybe 2%, maybe negative, whatever. We have some long-term growth path. And some years where we have more output than that, and some years we have less. And maybe for 5 years we have less, or 10 years we have less. But it's short run in the sense that we're not thinking that necessarily it's going to go on forever. And we will see that there's reasons to think that these things don't go on forever. Okay? If it becomes a 100-year thing, then it's not going to be what we're talking about in this class. That is something to do with innovation and the adaptation of innovation and people's, the work situation or whatever that caused us to be growing less than we thought was normal. But that's clearly the new normal, right? So we're going to be talking about short-run fluctuations. We're thinking 2, 3, 5, 10 years maybe on the outside, these sorts of booms and busts. Okay? And this is first of all, this is what the model that we're going to start out with is about. Secondly, this is a thing that has pretty profound impact on people's lives. If you graduate in a recession, you're going to find, generally speaking, on average, a much worse job than if you're graduating in a boom. And that's going to affect your life going forward. Maybe not yours particularly, but on average, it does affect people's lives going forward. People who graduate in recessions lifetime incomes tends to be significantly lower on average than people who graduate during booms. Okay? Unfair, totally nothing to do with you, but it's the facts of life. Right? And so we would like to understand these recessions and booms so that maybe we can make them, make the recessions not happen and make the booms last longer perhaps. Or maybe the booms are just too much output, right? Higher GDP is not necessarily good. Maybe people are working 20 hours a day and we'd like to cut that back a little bit so that people have a nice work-life balance thing. And we have so we would like to smooth out these recessions and booms so that people aren't arbitrarily hurt by graduating in the wrong time. Or we also have unemployment. People get unemployed. If you're 55 and get unemployed, it's really hard to find a decent job afterwards. And so these are important things, right? Okay. So here's going to be our first sort of important definition, and that is potential output. Okay. From now on, whenever we talk about GDP, we're going to call it Y, just like before, but we're going to be talking about real GDP, by and large. Unless I say otherwise, it's real GDP. So we've calculated the GDP, we've divided it through by a price index, so it's about the number of baskets of goods we've produced. Right? It's not about the value of baskets of goods anymore. It's about the number of baskets of goods, not nominal GDP, real GDP. And then we're thinking that there's some normal amount of GDP that gets created. As theorists, this is not a problem for us. For empirical people, trying to measure what's normal is very hard, because who the heck knows, right? You know your family. Like, if they're acting normal, they're acting a little weird, right? Because they're humans, and all humans act a little weird. And so normal for them, like normal for everybody else, is a little weird. And so little weird is actually normal, right? So what exactly do we mean by normal is going to be difficult in an empirical sense, trying to figure out what. We're going to assume that we kind of know for the theory, that there's some normal level of output. And we are going to call this, and this is a terrible, terrible name, we are going to call this potential output. And I am really, really sorry about this. This is terrible jargon. It is jargon that's stuck around with us since the 1800s. We're kind of stuck with it now. But it is horrible jargon, right? Because if I say, what is your potential? Why are you not living up to your potential? I don't know if people say that to you, but my parents certainly said that a lot to me. Why, Ivan? Why are you not living up to your potential? And that suggests that there's some perfect Ivan out there, and if I just behave perfectly and studied all the time and was better in every way, my very best self, then I could be at my potential, right? But here we're calling this thing potential output is not like that at all. Right? It sounds like when I say potential output that there's this maximum potential that our economy has to get to, and that if we get to that, we're at our potential. But in real life, we're always going to fall short of our potential, just like the younger Ivan. Right? We're always going to be below potential in real life if we use the natural English language. But we're not. We're bastardizing the English language. This is a piece of jargon that flies in the face of the English definition of potential. It just means normal. Potential output is the normal level of output. And we know if we think a little bit about it that a maximum level is a little bit ridiculous to even talk about, right? To get the maximum level of output, what we would want is we want everybody working 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Just work, and that would produce the most stuff, right? And that would be like the potential for what our economy could do. It's a ridiculous thing that's never going to happen, so why are we talking about it, right? Well, in fact, we're not. We're talking about just whatever the normal level of output is for this economy. Okay? And we are going to call this, we're going to give this a name. I don't know why I don't have the name down here. If I have a pen, that would help to draw the name. We're going to call this Y star. That's going to be our potential output. Okay. And this is another thing that's horribly, horribly written. This is the jargon, Y star. Y, real GDP. Remember, we're redefining Y to be real GDP instead of nominal GDP. So that makes sense. This is the GDP thing. But star, like if you take microeconomics or math in general, star reflects some kind of optimum value. right? In math, generally speaking, if we put a star on something, it almost always means an optimum of some sort. Okay, except for weak star convergence, which is a separate thing altogether. But otherwise, when we see a star, we think optimum. Certainly in microeconomics, stars always denote optimum, right? I don't know if you had that. But here it doesn't. It just means potential output, the normal level of output. Okay. I belabor this, and I belabor this just because it's so misnamed. Okay, and so it's very easy to sort of space off for this little section of the lecture and then be thoroughly confused for the rest of the course where you think potential must mean your best. But it doesn't mean that at all. It just means the normal amount, okay? Whatever normal is. Okay? I have anything? Yeah. And this is called potential output, is sometimes called full employment output, which is another horribly, horribly named thing. If you hear the word full employment, it naturally makes you think everybody's employed, right? That just sounds normal. But in fact, it doesn't. It's just in the same way, completely wrongly named. It just means the normal level of unemployment. So this is the level of output where we get the normal level of unemployment. And if output goes up, it means somebody's working harder, and so unemployment goes down below the normal level. And if output is below potential output, output is less than normal, means we're not producing very much stuff, which means, generally speaking, somebody isn't working at the normal level. Maybe they're unemployed, maybe they got their hours cut, and therefore unemployment is higher than the normal level of unemployment, higher than full employment. Okay. So two terribly named things. We're not going to talk a lot about unemployment, but in the background, it's what's kind of more important than output, because output is just stuff, and we are really genuinely more concerned with people being employed or unemployed. I'm just kind of waving my hands and saying that when output goes up, unemployment will tend to go down, and when output goes down, unemployment will tend to go up, and this is generally true, but it is not literally always true. Sometimes it happens that it doesn't happen this way. So if we were doing a more in-depth course, we would talk a lot about the connection between output and unemployment because it's actually important. But here we're not talking about it. But really the reason we're concerned about output is really genuinely more about employment, unemployment than it is about output itself, right? Because it's not clear that more stuff is bad. I mean, more stuff is good and that less stuff is bad. There's an optimum amount of stuff because all the stuff involves work to get it, right? But if people are unemployed, that is generally bad, right? And unemployment we define as people who want to work but can't find work. So if you're just, you're retired, you're not unemployed. If you just win the lottery and decide never to work again, you're not unemployed. You're just on the beach and, But if you want to work and can't work, then you're unemployed. So unemployment is clearly a bad thing because you want to work and can't do it. And so we're genuinely concerned about that. We're just breezing past it here, and we're using GDP, real GDP, as a stand-in for unemployment. Okay. This slide's super important, super simple. All we're doing is we're badly defining things in a very confusing and annoying way, okay, to match what they were thinking in the 1800s. Okay. I just belabor it again because it can cause you confusion later if you don't cop on now. Okay. The difference between the economy's potential output and the actual output is the output gap. Again, remember, potential output just means normal level of output. So the difference between what's normal and what we get is the output gap. And so the way we've got it defined, it's y star minus y, the normal level minus y, right? So normal output minus the output we get. So if this is positive, it means our output is less than potential output. So if this is positive, we are in a recession. So the way we've defined it is the output gap is how bad things are, right? And it can be positive or negative, right? We could have output higher than potential output, output higher than normal. If output is higher than normal, then this thing is negative, and how bad things are is negative, right? So it's a measure of how bad things are. We can also call, if this is positive, we can call it a recessionary gap. or we can call it an expansionary gap. The one thing I should say is, and this is important for those of you who are not using our book, most books and most of the profession define output gap this way. Maybe I go back and see it, y star minus y. Some books find that this is confusing to students, and so they flip it around, and they define it the opposite way. Right? And so be careful about how your book defines it. They'll all have it, it's fine. It's either y star minus y, like we're doing now, or it's y minus y star, in which case, if it's y minus y star, then a positive number is an expansionary gap, and a negative number is a recessionary gap. Okay. We have defined it this way, which is standard in the profession, but be careful out there if you have a different book. Okay. All the stories will be the same, nothing important will change, but you have to keep track of the minuses versus the pluses. That's one thing where a different book is going to maybe throw you off. Okay. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about unemployment, just because we're here. And it's worth thinking about unemployment very briefly. We are going to arbitrarily, if I can I move that off? The little yellow dot's always floating around. Okay. We're going to divide unemployment into categories. And whenever you do categories, we're being arbitrary. Real life is complicated. Categories are simple. We're always going to have edge cases that are weird. But we're going to define a few categories. We're going to have frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and cyclical unemployment. Okay? Three types of unemployment. Okay? Frictional unemployment is unemployment that comes about just because life is complicated and it's kind of hard to find a job and it's kind of hard to find workers. So if you graduate from university and you're looking around for a job, it might take you a while to find one, right? Because you don't know all the jobs that are out there. It takes some time to apply for each job. There's multiple rounds of interviews. You're going to get some, you're going to not get others. All these things are perfectly normal, but they're kind of a pain, right? And so you'll spend some time looking around for a job. Maybe you'll get a job that you don't really want. And you say, well, do I want to take that just to get work, or do I want to wait and see if I can find something better? And if you wait, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But you're going to be unemployed for a while. And so because information is imperfect, because all of these things in real life take some time, we're going to have some unemployment just as sort of the friction in the economy. Just ideally, things would move without any time lags or anything, but in real life, there's always going to be some of this. And we would like to lower that. We would like to make it easier to match up people with work, but in real life, it takes some time, and that's not necessarily worrying, right? It's annoying, and we would like to make it less, but the fact that it takes college students a little while to find a job, that's just life, right? Sometimes, university lecturers get fired for gross misconduct. Actually, that never happens. Gross misconduct, totally looked at. Maybe university lecturers get fired for pissing off the administrators. That's more like it. University lecturers get fired for pissing off an administrator, and then they have to find new work, and it's going to take them a while to do that, right? University lecturers, in economics anyway, there's a job market once every year. So if you get fired in April, it's going to be the next April before you have a job, most likely. And so that's annoying, but it's perfectly normal. It's not a sign of a badly functioning economy, other than we would like to make that less troubling. Okay? So frictional unemployment is a thing. Some people are unemployed just because of this for some time. But it's not something that we're going to worry about here in macroeconomics. Okay? We would like to do some microeconomic policies to match people up with jobs quicker, but it's not a worry for this class. Okay? Another thing which can happen is structural unemployment. This is unemployment because there's a mismatch between the skills that people have in the economy and the jobs that are out there. Okay, you can imagine back in the day, they made a lot of crystal in Waterford. There were some very highly skilled workers there who really knew how to make crystal. But most of the crystal jobs have moved out to South Korea, as I understand. I could be wrong. But moved out, and people making crystal we were just priced out of the market, and there's not nearly as much crystal made in Ireland as there used to be. Okay? Those people, they're very highly skilled, but their skills don't match the needs of the economy. Crystal making skills are not valued in our economy. They would have to learn Korean, which is a bit of a barrier. They'd have to move off to Seoul and all of this stuff. Right? And so we're going to have some unemployment because the skills of our people don't match the jobs that we've got. Okay? And this is something structurally wrong with the economy. It's typically industry by industry. And this is something that is really genuinely concerning. And we would like to do something. We would like to either attract industry that could use those skills, maybe making binoculars or something, or we would like to retrain those people so that they have skills that are useful in the industries we've got. But in any event, at the moment, those people would naturally be unemployed, right? Because their skills don't match the needs of the economy. There's something structurally wrong with the needs of the economy and the skills that people got. This is something that we're genuinely concerned about, but is not a macroeconomics problem. This is a microeconomics problem. This is something about a particular industry and how we can match up those skills with, or change those skills so it matches up something that people actually want, right? Industry actually wants. So while this is a problem, it's not something that we're going to address in macro. It's something that's more to be addressed in micro and policy. And so that's two types of unemployment. Of course, in real life, there's some overlap, right? These categories are neat and clean in our head. In real life, it's messy. But in theory, we can keep everything in our head. We're fine. And so that type of unemployment is, again, something that we're not going to be concerned about in this class. We are genuinely concerned about it, but not in this class. Okay? So if we take these two types of unemployment together, this is what we're going to call the natural rate of unemployment. Okay? Now, when you say the natural rate, it makes it sound like it's one of those natural laws like evolution or gravity or something like that. It's nothing like that. It's just the normal rate of unemployment. Like if everything were going normally in terms of the business cycle, this would be the level of unemployment we would get. Okay? Doesn't mean it's good, right? Structural unemployment, clearly bad, but it's some natural rate of unemployment, the rate that you would normally have, right? The normal rate of unemployment. Again, badly named, it is what it is. It is terrible is what it is, but there it is. That's the jargon, and I am sorry for my entire profession inflicting this upon you. Okay. And all the unemployment that's left over is because of the business cycle. So this is cyclical unemployment. If things are going really well in terms of economic activity, we're producing lots of output, it means lots of people went back to work, and unemployment is lower than normal, lower than the natural rate of unemployment, lower than the normal rate of unemployment. So some of these people that would normally be frictional are snapped up really quick. Right? Industries, we're desperate for workers, and they run out to the job fairs and they try to snap up all the university graduates and some of the people who haven't graduated, and they snap them all up, and so those people don't go through the normal frictional unemployment. Or they say, well, these Waterford guys, they don't have exactly the right skills, but they're smart, they'll learn stuff, we'll train them, right? Because they're desperate for workers. So in boom years, we would expect unemployment to be less than the natural rate of unemployment, which sounds unnatural, does it not? But there it is, less than the natural rate of unemployment, because that's just less than the normal rate of unemployment. And in recession years, say, well, normally we would hire a guy, but nobody's buying our product, so let's get rid of that guy. And unemployment will be higher than the natural rate of unemployment, higher than normal. Okay? The natural rate of unemployment, by the way, just so that you've seen it, we normally call U star. Okay? For the same reason. Again, the star is unfortunate here, but that's what it is. Okay? The normal level of unemployment. Yeah. That's just what I said. Okay. That's our definitions. We've gotten through it. Okay? The important thing to notice is that they are unnatural, and to be careful that you just don't use your natural English definition of potential and your natural English definition of natural rate, right? And you just realize those just mean the normal levels. And after that, it's pretty straightforward. Okay? But If you don't, if you just sort of use natural English language, you're gonna get confused as we go along. Right. Okay, so we're gonna do our first macroeconomic model. Yay, theory. I don't know if you feel that way. I feel that way. I'm happy about it. So our first question is going to be, what is a model? Because it's all well and good to sort of to tell you about a macroeconomic model, but if you don't know why we're doing it, well, what's the point? So the first thing I want to talk about is why we do modeling at all and what the goal of making a model is. And this is true in economics. It's also true in all social sciences, including commerce. To a lesser extent, it's true in physical sciences, but we're going to particularly focus on social sciences here. Okay. And our basic problem is that the world is really, 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 really complicated. It is so complicated that our tiny little monkey brains are never going to be able to fully understand it. And that seems, well, why not? Like, it's sort of natural. Oh, I could understand it. I'm reasonably clever. But no, we really have zero hope of fully understanding anything in social sciences, like ever. We will never fully understand it. But here we're particularly, well, is that shaking its head at now? It disagrees. Okay, yeah, we got you. We've registered your complaint. Camera doesn't agree with me, man. Okay. So, how can I say that? How can I say that? Well, let's take something that's simple, right? Let's take the game of chess. Game of chess, and I picked the game of chess because it's been well studied and we know a lot about chess. And one thing that we can all agree with, I hope, is that the game of chess is simpler than the game of life. Well, not the board game of life, but real life, right? Like real life. So, and certainly chess is part of life. And so if we can't understand chess, then we certainly can't understand life. And in fact, we cannot understand chess. Like, not only can we not understand it now, but they can throw all the computing power that they ever have at chess, and they're still not going to be able to solve chess in like a totally solved, we understand chess kind of way. They can get better and better at it, but they can't fully solve it. Because if you start looking at the number of moves that there are in chess, it depends on what you count as a good move, but some estimates have it, if they're very strict about what a good move is and get rid of unreasonable moves, there's more reasonable moves in chess than there are grains of sand on the planet. And if you're a little more lax, you can easily get there are more moves in chess than there are atoms in the universe. And so, given that there's this many possible permutations of games of chess, which is a very simple game, there's very strict rules, everyone takes an order. You move, then I move, then you move, then I move. And we know exactly when somebody won, and we know exactly what winning looks like. And you're only allowed to take certain moves, right? This is a very structured, very simple thing, and yet we got more moves than grains of sand on the planet, more moves, and we're a little lax about it, than there are atoms in the universe. We will never understand that fully. We're never going to follow out every path that you could take in chess and say that this is the optimum thing to do. It's just beyond, like, how can you design a computer that can follow out more permutations than there are atoms in the universe? Like, maybe someday, but it's really clearly well beyond anything that we have any hope of dealing with, right? And then if you think about real life is more complicated than that. In fact, chess is more complicated than chess, right? If you think about the game, and you think about the guys that are doing computer science and analyzing chess games and trying to make their computer programs play better than humans, which they all do now. You can get one on your phone that can beat a grandmaster, right? So they have learned this stuff. But if you think about a real game of chess between two humans, there's that, but there's also a psychological aspect. Like, have you gotten enough sleep? And are you psyched out because you're playing on somebody who's officially much better than you? Right? And all of these things, and you read accounts of actual chess players, like high-level chess players, the psychological element is really big. It's important. It affects the games. And so if we really wanted to understand chess between two humans, we would need to know all about the game of chess, all the atoms in the universe, plus we would need to know about all the facial expressions the opponent could have. We would need to know about all of the reaching for a piece and then taking the hand back. Ooh, does it psych him out? Does it make him think I'm doing the wrong thing? and then touching a piece and going here, no, go there. And all of that stuff we would have to analyze, right? And then if we think about any kind of real interaction, right? We have, like just in this room, we got a whole bunch of human beings. And each of you guys, and me too, we got like hopes and dreams and stuff, right? And we got things going on in our head, and we got daydreams, and we got nightmares, and we got all kinds of issues with our family and our commute and our soggy shoes and all the troubles of a human being that we're dealing with it all the time. And then that's super complicated, and then we're interacting with each other. And each one of these interactions is far, far, far more complicated than the game of chess. Right? Because your tone of voice matters when you're interacting with people, where you're looking, how you did your hair. All of this stuff is involved in every single interaction. And there's no order to the moves like there is in chess. Right? If we wanted to analyze, like fully understand the game of I'm leaving the class and I say, hi, how are you? What's your name? Just that little, and then my name is Joe. See you around. Right? That little interaction is going to be far, far more complicated than chess, because the tone of voice, the way you're walking, whether you say it in exactly in order, or whether you start talking and then he starts talking over you, all of that is far, far more complicated in chess. We will never fully understand that little interaction as we leave the room just saying hi and meeting a new person. We're kind of on our own. And then if you think, okay, let's understand the economy, well, clearly that's ridiculous, right? There's no way we're going to fully understand the economy, because the economy involves loads of people asking each other questions. It involves people, in fact, playing chess, right? And so all of this, there's no way we're going to fully understand it. So our first step in understanding the job we have in social science is to realize that full understanding is beyond human capability, right? And to make it even worse, we're dealing with humans. So if we fully understood the economy and we started using that information, people would say, Ivan and all the economists, they'd start with me, obviously. Ivan and all the economists have figured out the economy and they're using that information. How can I make money on that? And the fact that I learned it would change it, because people would try to make money based on my knowledge, right? And the fact that I think I know what's going on. And so there is no hope of fully understanding the economy. There's no hope of fully understanding anything involving groups of humans. Right? Now, that doesn't mean we should give up, right? It just means that we're never going to fully understand. We're always going to be in the world of partial understanding. We need to accept that and see what we can do with the partial understanding. It doesn't mean we can't do a good job. Right? Doesn't mean you can't analyze the economy and make money off that information. You can't do well in business. All of that stuff is still possible. But you're always going to be doing it from a position of partial understanding, not full understanding. I don't know if people bought this, but it is nonetheless, I think, true. So to understand this, we can never hope to include all the things that matter. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, let me not try to analyze the world. Let me try to analyze something about the world and understand something about the world. It's not going to be the full story, but it's going to be something, and hopefully it's going to be something important. Okay? And we're not going to, well, in this class, we're not going to spend months coming up with a model of the, hi, my name is Ivan, your name is Joe situation. We could. And I'm sure there's actually people who do, but that's not our economics thing. We're going to make stories about the economy to try to understand something about the economy, fully knowing that we're not going to fully understand the economy. Okay, so we're going to say, let me take a simplified version of the world, a simplified version of the economy that's simple enough that I can fully understand it with my tiny monkey brain. Okay? I'll fully understand that, and then I will have one of the important things that's going on in the economy. It's not going to be everything. And then once I have that, I can add on something else that's important in the economy. Okay? So my goal is to make a simple version of the world that throws out lots of information, because I can't possibly analyze everything. It's going to throw out lots of stuff, but captures something important, captures some essence of the problem. And I can do a good job or a bad job of this, right? I can make a little model of the economy that okay, is mostly about this introduction game as you're moving the class. Well, I haven't really understood the macroeconomy from that, because I didn't capture the essence of the problem. I captured something real, perhaps, but it's not an important thing, right? Understanding that doesn't add a lot of understanding to the whole story. So the art part is going to be trying to make a simple story that captures something real that's important. Okay? And then, so in our chess example, we can do that, right? We can have a little model of chess. So a little model of chess that I'm going to have is tic-tac-toe for the Americans, noughts and crosses for everyone else, I guess. You know this game, right? And this game is much, much, much simpler than chess. Insanely simpler than chess. It's fun when you're 5, it's fun when you're 6, and then you cop on how the game works and it stops being fun because you totally understand it, right? And you will notice that in tic-tac-toe, noughts and crosses, that when you're 6, you have a lot of fun because you don't know who's going to win, but at some point you fully understand the game and it's always a draw, right? Whoever starts first, it doesn't matter, you always draw the game. Now, I'm going to say that this is a model for chess. It is a simplified version of chess that captures something important. Here's my argument. Chess is a game where you have very specific rules on what you're allowed to do. And you're going to take turns doing that. I'm going to do it, then you're going to do it, I'm going to do it, you're going to do it. Very clear victory conditions, right? Noughts and crosses is exactly the same way. We're taking turns in order. There's very clear structure on what I'm allowed to do. I have to put my O in one of the boxes. I can't put it way out to the side. I can't put it on top of another one. There's very strict rules on where I can put my O. And there's very clear victory conditions, right? So in that sense, it's capturing something perhaps important about chess. Now, chess is obviously insanely more complicated, but it's so complicated we can't understand it. Whereas noughts and crosses is simple enough that we can fully understand it. And one of the things that we know about noughts and crosses is that as players get better, as they turn from age 6 to age 7, somewhere in there they cop on about how noughts and crosses work. And after that, it's always a draw. Right? And if we look at highly ranked players, if you have a new player to chess, you'll find that one guy's going to win, one guy's going to lose. You very rarely draw. But as you move up in the rankings and people get better and better and better, the higher you go, the higher percentage of games end up in a draw. Okay? Which suggests that perhaps noughts and crosses is giving us some insight into why that is. Okay? Now, you can buy it or not, right? And that's important about models. This as a model for chess is imperfect. And you could say, no, it's not capturing anything real about chess at all. It's just a dumb thing that Ivan is saying. And you would not be wrong, right? It's a matter of opinion. I think I'm right, but so what, right? You're entitled to your opinion to think I'm wrong because it is an imperfect model, right? And all models are going to be imperfect. The idea behind a model is we take something complicated and we try to capture the essence of that, or at least one essence of that, in something super simple that our brains can handle. Okay? And if we do that well, we've captured something real about the real problem. And if we do that poorly, we've captured something stupid about the real problem that's not important at all. Or maybe we've captured nothing at all. Okay? And that's a matter of judgment. Okay? So I'm going to present some models, but you are certainly and totally within your right to say these models don't capture anything important about the economy at all. Okay? And it doesn't matter that John Maynard Keynes wrote the model. You are absolutely, totally entitled to your opinion to think this is rubbish. Okay? You are not wrong. Okay? And when I say it does capture something, I'm not right either. These are going to be tools to help us think about these problems, focusing on one particular aspect of the problem. Okay? So, when we're making a model, our goal is to simplify reality. Okay? So, you should expect that all our models are going to be simple. They should be simple. This is a goal, it is a feature, it is not a bug. We are trying to simplify things down into something that we can easily understand. Then we'll understand that one thing, and then we'll make another model to understand something else, and then we'll put them together and see if they interact. So we're going to start simple, and we're going to build up. We'll never get to reality, but we will hopefully get closer. Right? So our first job is to figure out The art part is figuring out what aspect of reality do we think is important, well, one of the aspects that's important, and how can we make a simplified story that allows us to fully understand that aspect. Okay? And then we analyze the heck out of it. Make sure we fully understand that. In our little simple story, we fully analyze that thing until it becomes kind of intuitive to us. And then, and only then, do we trick it up and make it more realistic. Okay? So the beauty of the model is that it gives us something simple enough that we can fully understand. Okay? And the downside is that we've simplified away loads of things that are super important. Okay? Okay. So one of the things that people always want to do, particularly when you're just starting out, but even later on, empirical people saying, oh, this is a bad model, it's not realistic. Of course it's not realistic. The goal is to create something unrealistic, right? Because reality is too complicated to understand. We are trying to simplify things down to something unrealistic, but that captures something real. And then once we fully understand it, then we can start making it more realistic. Okay? Okay. People with me here? You don't know what I'm talking about because you haven't seen a model yet. So what you going to do? Okay, I was blabbering on about this. Okay. But nonetheless, here's Mr. George Box, a famous econometrician. You will probably, if you take econometrics, you will run into the Box statistics named after this guy. And I don't know, I never met him, but he seems nice. I don't know, he takes a nice picture. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Okay, so all the models we are going to have and all the models you will ever have will be wrong. Okay, so saying they're wrong is not helpful. The question is it useful? Is it capturing something real? And does it help me understand that real thing? Okay, so we're to the actual model. I got 3 minutes, so I'm going to leave it here, and we'll start the model next time.